What is up, Watch fam? Welcome to Rant&h. I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and on Mondays on this series called Rant&h, I just give you some of my thoughts on something that's been going on in the watch industry or kind of in my head, which is by extension in the watch industry. So that's it. Let's get into today's rant. Actually, before we do, because I know you guys get so angry when I don't do this, it's a quick wristwatch check. So I'm wearing an absolutely amazing vintage Omega Seamaster, and I just love Seamasters. They, to me, represent some of the best value in vintage watches. If they doubled in price, they wouldn't be such value props anymore, but they'd still be buys, which is an amazing thing you can't say for most watches. So that's it. That's what's on my wrist right now. So now we'll actually get into the rant. I'm actually going to talk about something that Ben Clymer wrote on Hodinkee pretty recently that I totally agreed with. I don't remember verbatim what he said, and I did not reread what he said. I'm going to paraphrase, and you guys can trust me. Ben Clymer basically, in a whole article, in like a 12-point article about vintage watch collectors, and I didn't really care for, I don't really give a shit. But at one point, he talked about Rolex, and he talked about how we should all really think about how we think about Rolex and kind of like check ourselves a little bit. And I do agree with him. So his point was basically when you don't know anything about watches, Rolex is the be-all and end-all. It's the only watch in the world, right? The oyster bracelet, the presidential bracelet, these are like, the biggest icons. They're the only watches that exist. They mean watches. They're the best watches in the world. And to most people, I'll even take it a step further, and to most people that I've come in contact with that don't really know anything about watches, or don't care to know anything about watches, the Rolex makes those watches that sweep. They don't tick, they sweep. And to people, that don't know anything about watches, that think that that's the Rolex trademark. Of course, they've never seen, any mechanical movement or any electronic movement for that matter. So they don't know what they're talking about. But the fact that Rolex has been able to like unofficially trademark mechanical movement is just hysterical. But then Ben went on to say, and then as soon as you start to know something about watches, you then, hate Rolex or something like that. You think that they're just, the cliche thing that everyone likes, and there's no reason to like them. And that's it happens. I mean, people, in their development of thinking and in how they view brands and how they view items, they do change. And I'm cool with that. I'm totally like everyone changes. I think I went through that phase as well at one point. That like it was weird to like Rolex because it's so cliche and it's so whatever. And then he finally said, but then, you should reach this point where you realize just how amazing Rolex watches are and just why they're so popular to begin with. And I do, like I said, I do agree with him. I mean, the reason that Rolex watches are popular, I guess the catalyst was the fact that they were good, right? The fact that they were James Bond, they were good watches, and all of those things, right? They weren't the flashy status symbols that they are today. But the reason they are what they are today is because they are status symbols. And it's just the truth. I mean, I've worn much more expensive watches than Rolex out, or at least like steel Rolex out, and people have really no idea what's going on. Rolex is a status symbol, whether you are in a restaurant or at a dinner party or at a strip club. Rolexes are the kind of pinnacle, the social pinnacle of watches. And that's not why I like them. I mean, I'm sure that's why some of you guys like them, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. It's cool to, kind of feel like, I don't know, just a superstar sometimes. I get it, it's fun. But that's not all they are, of course, and we know that. What I love most about Rolex, right, I guess this is the rant right now, what I love most about Rolex is I genuinely think, expressed in their watchmaking, expressed in how exactly they make watches, they show everyone, the whole world, that they understand people and their relationship to watches better than any other brand in the world. Not watch geeks, not people, specific groups. I'm talking about just people holistically. Why? So let's start with they're durable. They're watches that you can, that most of the world does, wear, as opposed to just sit in a velvet robe smoking a cigarette in your bear hunting room. Most people have to go out, whether that's construction or whether that is whatever the your job is. Usually people want to wear something and drive something and own something that's a little bit more robust than something dainty. I get it, and women and men both want to kind of have that robustness, right? They are quality, they are made very well, and for two reasons that's good. One, it's good because it stands the test of time, and 78-year-old grandpa telling 12-year-old grandson that Rolex is the best watches in the world because look at mine, I still have mine. That's marketing. I mean, it's like you have a sales rep. You have a sales rep and a 78-year-old retired man that kind of cares about nothing else, apart from his family and his watch that he got when he retired. So that, and I get it. Like, I totally respect, Rolex for that, and we really need to take a step back and remember that. And yes, other brands do the same. I mean, Seiko's, will work forever basically as well, and Pateks and everything. But finally, Rolex in their mechanics, right, in their movements, in how they actually make a watch run, they show that yes, quality is important, and we want it to be expensive, we want it to be important, we want it to be in the higher level of the world as far as status. Still, we don't geek out too much. We don't trick ourselves. I have a friend that is a bread store by where I live, and I love him, at @ngrain on Instagram. Check him out. And he makes great food. I mean, really just like totally terrific stuff. But the conversation we always have is people that start their own businesses, whether it's his bread shop or my watch shop or someone else's, whatever, you by nature are going to be the most passionate person about your medium, right? Whether that's bread or watches, about your business. You are the most passionate person. No one else should care as much as you do. But given that, you're still serving the market, and you need to check yourself and understand that you're not the only one in the world. And in fact, you're a minority. You're a really small piece of the pie. And really, before you owe, your kind of piece to bread, before you owe your respect to bread, you are trying to, make money. You are trying to, appeal to the masses and not just yourself. It's not about you always. It's about building a great business that everyone can appreciate on one level or another. And that's what Rolex has done. Yes, they are quality, but Rolex, in my opinion, has no delusions of grandeur that everyone's a watch geek. In fact, they know that most of their clients aren't. And they don't undermine them. I don't think that they kind of make a fool of them by selling them because it's the Rolex name. They don't do that. But they also, don't over-decorate. They don't have to do, sapphire case bags. They don't need to put on 80 different power reserve indicators and different, new innovations and new innovations and new innovations and new innovations like so many other brands have to do to stay alive. Rolex barely markets, for that matter. I mean, they do a little bit of marketing, on the internet a little bit. They have some paper marketing as well, but they really are selling a good product. But they know and they understand that, yeah, could we do it better, quote unquote, for the watch community? Of course we could. But that's not us. We're just great, robust, versatile in design watches that the world loves and loves just because of the principles of our business. So yeah, there is, like Ben Clymer said, a bell curve about Rolex. You think it's the biggest thing in the world, think it's the most important watch company ever to exist, and it might be, but you think it's the only watch company to ever exist, then you think it's because everyone else likes it. And I guess what I'm trying to do here is help some of you guys out there that have like a sour taste in your mouth about Rolex to not. Don't have a sour taste in your mouth about Rolex, whether you can afford them or whether you can't. I don't think it really matters. It's just about appreciating something. That's it. I mean, if you've worn a Rolex, and not all of them, I mean, there are some, low points in Rolex production for sure, and Rolex might be resting on their laurels in many of their ways, as far as production today, but still, you're really wearing a timeless machine, and that's funny because it's a pun or whatever, but the truth is, you buy a Rolex right now, not only will it be stylistically relevant in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, but it'll be functional and it'll always be serviceable and for a relative low cost. Because the truth is, if my Rolex, my 1977 Datejust, I'll give that to my son one day, right? I'm far away from having a son, but one day I'll give it to him. And if he doesn't give a shit about Rolexes or watches or anything like that, and he's going to have to go for a service eventually, it's going to cost him $500, $600, he'll pay it. Because it was Dad's watch, and Dad's watch deserves to be treated well. I can see any rational person feeling that way. But if I give my son a complicated Patek, and in 30 years, he's like, I don't really want to spend $6,000 or $4,000 servicing this thing. Yeah, it was Dad's watch, but that was Dad's thing, and that's the truth. I mean, these Rolex watches, they transcend generations. I think they were genuinely valuable, and they can be appreciated by people 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and 60 years from today. And that is a magnificent thing. I mean, look at Madonna. She's irrelevant now, and she can't get over it. That's kind of doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it does. I mean, they didn't just have a little window and kind of like try to suck to it or pretend as if it's still the 80s. They've evolved, but they've stuck to their core principles, and it works. So don't hate on Rolex so much. Come around to the, I guess, to the dark side or to the green side and see that Rolex really does deserve a lot of the credit they do get. Thank you guys for watching Rant&h. I hope that you enjoyed it, and that's it. So have a great day.